Mataji. Tatra hritasta naradeva kanya Kujjena drishtva harimarta bandhum Utthaya sadyo jagruhu praharsha Vridanuragha pravitavalokai. Tatra, inside the house of Narakasur, Ahritaha, kidnapped, Taha, all those, Nara Deva Kanya, daughters of many kings, Kujena, by the demon, Drishtva, by seeing, Harim, the Lord, Arta Bandhum, the friend of the distressed, Utthaya, at once got up, Sadhya, then and there, Jagruhu, accepted, Praharsha, joyfully, Vrida, shyness, Anuraga, attachment, Prahita avalokai, by eager glances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: there in the house of the demon, all the princesses kidnapped by Narakasur at once became alert upon seeing the Lord, the friend of the distressed. They looked upon him with eagerness, joy, and shyness, and offered to be his wives. Purport: Narakasur kidnapped many daughters of great kings and kept them imprisoned in his palace. But when he was killed by the Lord, and the Lord entered the house of the demon, all the princesses were enlivened with the joy and offered to become his wives, because the Lord is the only friend of the distressed. Unless the Lord accepted them, there would be no chance of their being married, because the demon kidnapped them from their father's custody, and therefore no one would agree to marry them. According to Vedic society, girls are transferred from the custody of the father to the custody of the husband. Since these princesses had already been taken away from the custody of their fathers, it would have been difficult for them to have any husband other than the Lord Himself. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahit Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class this Easter Monday. So we're continuing with Uddhava's extolation of the glories of Sri Krishna from what association he had with him. He was his chief Mantri Raj at Dwarka. And we learn in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that Lord Krishna spoke to him in great depth about so many things in Dwarka. And then here we find that Uddhava has left Hastinapur being disgusted with the behavior of Duryodhana, Dushasan, Dhritarashtra. He hung up his bow on the palace door and he left. He took Vanaprastha, he took sannyas, and he's traveling around. And previously to him coming and meeting with Uddhava, Uddhava was actually talking with Sri Krishna before Krishna left back to the spiritual world. And then Krishna instructed him to go to Badrikashram, which Uddhava was doing, and Maitreya Rishi was hearing the conversation. So now Vidura, in the course of his travels, has come in contact with Uddhava, and he's asked him the simple question to please describe the glories of Sri Krishna. So these pure devotees, like Uddhava, are compared to be like dry wood. So dry wood is extremely flammable. If you just put a tiny sparks of a flame, then the wood will catch fire. So the catalyst or the impetus for these pure devotees to start glorifying Krishna is just more often just a question. We see at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, towards the end of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, these sages of Naimisharanya, they ask a question, or rather, it's actually Parikshit Maharaj that asks Shukadeva Goswami the question, please describe to us the duty of someone who is about to die. Now, if someone asks you that question, you wouldn't necessarily think about talking about Krishna or reciting the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? If you're a karmi, you'd give some example, some medical example or something like that, some analogy, some material example you'd give. But just that one question, which is not directly in relation to Krishna, what is the duty of someone who is about to die? Shukadeva Goswami takes that as an opportunity to recite the entire Bhagavad philosophy, 18,000 verses, each verse of which is said by the Goswamis to be filled with nectar, with Krishna Prema, imbued with Krishna Prema. So Shukadeva Goswami is doing it. We see here Uddhava is doing it. Another example that comes to mind is the Pandavas at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhima, Yudhishthir, and then later on Arjuna when he comes back from Dwarka. And they initially start to see the omens, bad omens. Because Krishna has now left to go back to Golok Vrindavan. And as a result, Kali Yuga is fully taking its force on earth. So then they start to see these bad omens. And then they start to contemplate, why are these omens coming? And finally, they already know what the reason is. And of course, Arjuna knew what the reason is. But they wanted to sort of push that reason under the carpet for as long as possible. Because they're so deeply in love with Krishna that they didn't want to conceive of Krishna leaving earth, leaving their association, their eternal associates of Krishna. And they follow Krishna wherever Krishna goes, from universe to perform his pastimes. And there Arjuna explains that upon understanding the loss of Krishna, he starts to glorify Krishna about his pastimes, about how they're walking through the forests together. Krishna used to sleep with us, dine with us, all these different things Krishna used to do with us. Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to me, Arjuna says, and he laments his loss. I was recently reading a small book, I think it's by, who's that disciple? Madhavananda Prabhu. He's a senior disciple of Guru Govinda Maharaj. And the small book is called Gopal Jew. So it's a book which is talking about the personal deity, the Ishta Devata of Guru Govinda Maharaj. And if you know anything about the history of Guru Govinda Maharaj, he was a Vaishnava from birth. He was born in a really elevated Vaishnava family from a little district in Orissa called Gadaigiri. So for many, many generations, something like 5, 6, 7 generations previously, his ancestors had begged Krishna to appear, to directly come straight from Vrindavan. So his great-great-great-great-grandfather, whoever it may have been, I forgot the name of his ancestor, but whenever a Vaishnava would go to Vrindavan from Orissa, he would beg him, please bring back Krishna. Please, I want to worship Krishna. Please bring back Krishna. So then after many, many requests and after desiring so strongly, Krishna finally came from Vrindavan as the deity Gopal into their household. And then began the worship of Gopal in their family lineage. And it's said that the Oriya style of kirtan is very unique. It's different from the Bengali style. So his family members were very adept kirtan singers. They used to do bhajans and kirtans in their houses. And so Brajabandhu, that was Maharaj's name prior to being initiated as Gaur-Gopal Das, and then later Maharaj. So he was very much in connection with his deity Gopal. He used to see Gopal everywhere. He never was separated from Gopal, even for an instance. Even when he later on joined ISKCON and became a traveling sannyasi, he always used to carry a picture of Gopal with him. So we can take a really pertinent example from this story, that yes, Krishna is there everywhere, right? We were talking last week about Krishna as Brahman, and that represents the all-pervasive, the omnipresent aspect of Krishna. The Paramatma represents the omniscient aspect of Krishna, the all-cognizant aspect. And Bhagwan represents the omnipotent aspect of Krishna, the all-powerful aspect of Krishna, Krishna who possesses all energies. But even though Krishna is everywhere, right? We have the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. Krishna is there as Radha Shyam Sundar. In Mayapur is present as Radha Madhava. But here in Sydney, that same Krishna is present as Radha Gopinath. Sanchintya tasya sadrishim tanumaparete govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Towards the end of the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma is praying that according to the devotees' rasa, according to the devotees' taste and flavor in their relationship with Krishna, Krishna manifests to that devotee accordingly. Right? Yesterday Kamsari Sena Prabhu and previously Baba Bhushan Prabhu was mentioned. I think it's in the next couple of texts as well. It explains that the queens of Krishna, the 16,108 queens of Krishna in Dwarka, they were not all homogeneously looking the same way. Some were tall, some were skinny, some were plump, some were, like that, in different bodily shapes and different bodily forms. So Krishna, he manifested himself accordingly in that particular way. So 16,108 Krishnas to match the size and the shapes of the various different queens that he had. So Gopinath is present here, and we can see this particular aspect of Gopinath. He's appearing as a very small, cute young boy. If you look at Gopinath's face, sometimes I think, because when I went to Vrindavan, I think it was the time I went when it was 2015 or something like that. And there's a nearby, there's a temple to the Krishna Balaram temple. It's called the Radha Madhav temple. And they have really beautiful deities of Radha Madhav. And Radharani, the deity of Radharani, she has a naturally occurring black dot on the chin. What do they make that with? Kasturi or something like that. Sometimes they decorate Radharani with a black dot here in the chin. So she has a naturally appearing dot on her chin. She looks really beautiful. So this particular temple, it's on the side of a road. They don't have like a big property or anything like that, but they have a really tiny goshala with just like 3 or 4 cows. And when I went there, the mother cow, the cow, had given birth to a brand new baby calf, a brand new white baby calf. And I was just looking at the face of this baby calf, and immediately I got reminded of Gopinath's face. If you look at Gopinath's face, to me, his face looks like as beautiful, as sweet, as innocent as a little white baby calf's face. So this particular Gopinath, this particular aspect of Krishna that is present here by his own sweet will in Sydney, has different attractive qualities which other Krishnas in other temples, in other ISKCON temples, don't have. So we as devotees of Gopinath have a really prime opportunity to develop a particular unique relationship with Gopinath. Each deity has different moods. We see that Prabhupada himself brought Radha Gopinath, right? He carried Radha Gopinath. Personally, Radharani was carried in Srila Prabhupada's lap on the airplane here. I think Gopinath, he came in the cargo, isn't that right? Where did he come? Oh, Balimardan. Okay, sorry, Balimardan was carrying Gopinath. And then prior to that, Radha Gopinath came on a ship which dropped off Radha Gopinath at Bondi, and no one claimed them because the temple had changed addresses or something. So no one came to claim them. And so they were sent back all the way to India. So we see that Gopinath is very persistent to want to come to the Western countries to preach Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada, he requested Radha Gopinath to please take care of these mlechas and yavanas, the devotees back then, and indeed we still are, mlechas and yavanas. We're in no way qualified to worship Radha Gopinath in the way that is deserving of them. He prayed to Radha Gopinath to please take care of these mlechas and yavanas so that they can worship you nicely. So, a very prime opportunity that we have to develop constant service attitude and constant remembrance of Gopinath. So this is something that we see with Uddhava. Something that we can take home. That, like, if you can do a thought experiment. You can close your eyes, right? If you want, you can do it now. You can close your eyes, and you can tell your mind, okay, just roam free. Just think of whatever you want to think of. And different thoughts will come to your mind, right? You'll think of your house, your children, you'll think of the opposite sex, you'll think of whatever is near and dear to your heart, you'll think of that. So, from this we can understand that the condition or the state of our mind right now is a good indicator of what sort of future we're going to have after the death of this present body. Right? Krishna says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajanti ante kalevaram. So, at your consciousness at the time of death determines your next life, and also your physical reality that you're experiencing presently is the reality that you're actually experiencing in your mind. If you're happy and content inside, then outside, no matter what you face, no matter what you encounter, you'll see from that framework. And if you're always depressed and anxious and always easily agitated, then no matter what happens to you outside, even if people are really nice to you or whatever, some favorable opportunities come up or something like that, you'll still be depressed. So more important than the body, the physical outside reality is your mind, the condition of your mind. And the condition of your mind is dependent on your consciousness, and your consciousness, as is explained in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is dependent on the existence of the Supersoul. So we love ourselves because the soul is inside our body, and we like the soul originally because Krishna as the Supersoul is the source and the cause of the soul. Okay? So here in this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada is explaining about how Narakasur, or Bhaumasur, the son of Krishna himself in the form of Varaha and Mother Earth, Bhumi, how he kidnapped many daughters of great kings. He kidnapped 16,100 princesses from different kingdoms and provinces, and he kept them in his palace. And just to sort of recap this pastime, we've heard it over the last couple of days, but Krishna's pastimes are there to, create and sustain remembrance of them. Ananda chinmaya rasat mataya manasuya praninam pratifalam smaratam upetya lilayatena bhuvanani jayatya jasram govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. The only reason that Krishna comes to perform pastimes with his loving devotees, is to create impressions in their mind so that they can remember him in Krishna's absence. Isn't that what Krishna is all about? Krishna is always about being in touch with his devotee and then leaving his devotee. But even when Krishna leaves his devotee, because his pastimes are so sweet and captivating, Krishna is called Manohar, that person who captures your mind. Because Krishna is Manohar, in Krishna's absence, Krishna's devotees feel his presence even more than in Krishna's sambhog, in Krishna's presence, direct presence. So, as this pastime goes, Indra came and begged Krishna to please save the demigods, because this Asura had stolen Aditi's earrings and Varuna's umbrella and Mani Parvat, which is the top of Mount Mandara, and it's said to be the pleasure playgrounds of the demigods. And obviously it's stolen these princesses as well. So Krishna, please come and help. So Krishna said, okay, no worries. At the request of Indra, he came. And he took his wife Satyabhama for the 3 reasons that Kamsari Senapur was explaining. And indeed he was quoting the Acharyas. So Satyabhama wanted to go on an adventure. She had that type of personality. So Krishna took her. And Satyabhama was also the origin of Bhumi Devi. So Bhumi Devi is an expansion of Satyabhama. So because Narakasur or Bhaumasur was the son of Bhumi Devi, he had a benediction that no one could kill him unless his mother would give permission. So unless Bhumi Devi would give permission, no one would be able to kill him. So he took Satyabhama with him, because Satyabhama, being the original source of Bhumi, was also non-different from Bhumi. So when the battle started, Krishna approached the fortress of Bhaumasur, Pragjotishpur, is that the name? So the name of that district is called Pragjotishpur, and it was a big fortress with turrets, as Prabhu was explaining yesterday, barbed wire and swamps and moats and big walls and all that sort of stuff. So Krishna approached on Garuda carrying Satyabhama, and out from one of the moats came Mura, a 5-headed demon who started throwing tridents at Krishna. Krishna obviously, eventually he got his Sudarshan Chakra and beheaded his heads, and therefore Krishna got the name Murari. So we say Krishna Murari. Krishna got that name because he killed at that instance the name Mura. Does anyone know when Krishna got the name Govinda? Yeah, after Govardhan Puja, after Indra, showered the water, the storms, and then Krishna held the hill. Yeah, Govardhan Puja. So then we see at the end that Indra, he actually came to apologize to Krishna, along with Surabhi. And at that time, because Krishna enlivens the senses and enlivens the cows, and Surabhi was there present, he was bestowed with the name Govinda. Of course, Govinda is an eternal name of Krishna. Anyway, so Krishna became Murari upon killing the Mura demon. And after Mura was killed, along came 7 of his sons, who were also killed by Krishna. Krishna finally started battling with Bhaumasur, and Krishna killed Bhaumasur, and then he retrieved all of the princesses by going into Bhaumasur's palace. So that is what this verse is talking about. They're in the house of the demon. So Krishna has entered the house now, and he's seeing these 16,100 princesses. And then upon seeing Krishna, they're coming to, or rather they're looking at Krishna with eagerness, joy and shyness, and they're offering themselves to be his wives. And basically the whole theme of this purport is about how in Vedic society it was based on extremely strict moral principles. So chastity was a great quality which is upheld in Vedic society. And we see that at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Kulakshaya pranashanti kula dharma sanatana dharma nashte kulam krishnam adharma vibhavati uttaha. adharma bhibavat Krishna pradushanti kulastriya strishu dushtashu varshneya jayate varana sankara. So one of the reasons why Arjuna is telling Krishna why I don't want to fight is because he's saying that the men in society, when we talk about men, we're not talking about the type of men we have these days. We're talking about men who have been trained in the proper Vedic system. They are completely under the control of their senses. They're equal to all, magnanimous, have all these great qualities, courage, bravery, all that sort of stuff. So when these men unnecessarily are killed in this battle, then the traditions, the family traditions will completely fall apart because no one will be there to enforce these traditions anymore. So the family tradition will be lost, and as a result, unscrupulous men will come and they'll take advantage of the women in society, and as a result of that, unwanted children or Varna Sankara will start to flood society at the risk of increased war and pestilence. Right? Sankaro narakayava kulagnanam kulascha patanti pitoryesham lupta pindo dakakriya. So it's very scientific, very culture. So after Varna Sankara flood human society, because the family traditions are lost, what happens to the forefathers who have passed away? The children no longer perform Pinda ceremony to appease their forefathers who are suffering in some other form of life, somewhere else in the universe, or in hellish conditions. They don't get Vishnu Mahaprasad. And then as a result, they stay in Naraka. They don't get the chance to be liberated. Right? Like, one's offspring in Vedic culture are called Putra and Putri. Right? That the children should deliver their parents, particularly by this Pinda ceremony. So Arjuna is saying that that will be lost, and which is not good. Kulakshaya kritam dosham varna sankara karakai utsadyante jati dharmas kula dharmasya shashvata. And Arjuna gives another reason, which is devastating to human society if the men in society are killed, is that community welfare projects and welfare activities in general for society, that will stop as well. So it's bad for human society in general, and it's also bad for the ancestors which have passed away. Now, Prabhupada often quotes, I think he says it there in his purports to the Bhagavad Gita, and indeed here in the purport it says, since these princesses had already been taken away from the custody of, according to Vedic society, girls are transferred from the custody of the father to the custody of the husband. So Srila Prabhupada often says that a woman is always protected in all different phases of her life. When she's young, she's protected by her father. Then when she's middle-aged, then she's protected by her husband. And then when she's old and elderly, then she's protected by her elder sons. So equality is there in the sense in Vedic culture. Equality is perfectly present in the Vedic culture in the sense that everyone is on the spiritual platform, especially in a Devi Varnashram system, where the goal of life is not dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. The goal of life is Krishna consciousness. When you have, in modern days, today, when you have governments which sort of push aside dharma, right? You have secular governments in many countries, and governments which push away moksha, the goal of life, which is liberation, moksha, then all you're left with is artha, economic development, and kama, sense gratification. So everyone thinks that the goal of life is economic development and sense gratification. And therefore both genders, both male and female, therefore want equal opportunity for economic development and sense gratification. Therefore what's happened gradually over the last 6 or 7 decades, because people have become extremely materialistic. See, equality exists perfectly on the spiritual platform, right? We're all Satchitananda, the soul is eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. We're all feminine in nature, we're all Prakriti, right? And because we're all supposed to engage in serving Krishna. Krishna is the enjoyer and we are the enjoyed. We're all 1/10,000th the size of the tip of the hair. We're all Krishnera Nityadas. Right? So we're all equal on the spiritual platform. But where is there equality on the material platform? Even if you take materially the two most similar sort of cases, let's say like identical twins or something like that, right? Materially they look exactly the same, but still these two identical twins have different karmas, different likes, different dislikes, different tastes, different destinies. Yastva indra gopam atavendra ahasva karma bandhanurupam falabhajanam atanoti karmani nirdhati kintu ja bhakti bhajam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. From Indra down to the lowest germ, the Indra Gopa, everyone is bound by the reactions of their fruitive activities. So there's no equality in the material platform. Everyone looks differently, everyone thinks differently, because everyone is influenced by the modes of material nature in a different way, in different permutations, different combinations. Some people are more introverted, some people are more ecstatic, extroverts, some people are always sad and, like that. Some people are always lively. So there are different types of conditionings, different types of personalities. Everyone is an individual. But qualitatively, there is equality on the spiritual platform, not on the material platform. But we have a civilization which is trying to create spiritual equality on the material platform. We're trying to make everything equal. There's a big debate going on right now, and it's a really controversial debate, and I don't want to get into it because I don't know too much about it, but I've heard. It's called the gender pronouns debate. Maybe you've heard of it. So in an attempt to make everything equalized and neutral in today's society, there's a certain group of people in today's, primarily in the Western world, in America and England, Australia, where they want to stop using gender-specific pronouns. Right? You know what a pronoun is? A pronoun is a noun. A pronoun is a word which can replace a noun. So for example, I can say Barry went to this place. So I can replace the word Barry with he. So he is a pronoun. So he went to this place. Or Anna ate this. So instead of Anna, I can use she ate this. Right? So instead of using he and she, they want to create equality on the material platform by getting rid of gender-specific pronouns, he and she, and instead use they. Or instead of using mother and father, use caretaker, use parent. So this is their attempt to create equality on the material platform. But the Vedic culture understands that according to their psychophysical conditioning, each gender has particular roles and according to their psychophysical conditioning, and it's something which has been prevalent in human society for thousands and thousands of years. Because we think the goal of life is economic development, we're trying to create a society where everyone is given an equal opportunity to develop economically and experience sense gratification. But when the goal of life is Krishna consciousness, then no one cares about that sort of stuff. Everyone works together according to their responsibilities and duties, according to the Varnashram system, to become Krishna conscious. So equality is facilitating, giving everyone, both genders, the equal opportunity to be encouraged in duties which come natural to them, so that their mind will be peaceful, and therefore they can prosecute Krishna consciousness. This is equality according to the Vedic culture. It is not that the women have to take up the traditional roles of the men, and the men have to feel that they need to relax more and take up the traditional responsibilities of the women. That's the materialistic conception of equality. Vedic equality is based on giving everyone an equal chance to practice Krishna consciousness. And if I see in my own personal example, I see that with my mother, Radha Madhupati Devi Dasi. So my parents immigrated to Australia in 1992, and I think I was like 3 years old that time. And I think when they came here, my mother, she chose to work. I think she only worked for like 1 or 2 years or something like that. And then after some time, my brother was born. And she chose herself to be a housewife. She chose to be a housewife. And I can see in her life, that she was given full opportunity, encouragement by my father and her family members to practice her religion, to practice spirituality, and whatever traditions she had learned when she grew up. She used to very regularly, I think almost every day or every second day, chant the entire Vishnu Sahasranam. She knew so many different artis and whatever, different stotras and all that sort of stuff. And I could see that she was a very content, peaceful, happy person. Then when I was growing up, I used to go to the houses of as a kami, obviously, as a young boy. I used to go and stay over at my friend's house, right? Stayovers, sleepovers. Used to play computer games all night, watch movies. But I used to observe my friends' parents, and especially like in this case, in this context, their mothers. And their mothers were working so hard. I remember one of my friend's mothers, she was like a professor. And she was like a really high-level emeritus professor, always engaged in her work. Even when she came home, she was engaged. And not only was she working, but when she came home, she also had to do the housework as well. Take care of the children, cook, all that sort of stuff. And I would see in my friends' houses that their shrines or their altars were just like really small. They would just have like a plastic frame of Lord Ganesh or something like that. And there would not be any time for the mother or father to even light an incense or a lamp. So this is not freedom, I would say, especially if the goal of life is Krishna consciousness. This is not equality, I would say. Especially the example we see in Vedic culture. Like take, for example, the superlative example of Vrindavan itself. In Vrindavan, what do we see? We see that Mother Yashoda and the gopis, what are they doing during the daytime? They're milking the cows, they're churning the butter, they're picking up the cow dung, making cow dung patties. And all the while, they're doing these household duties, and they're so peaceful inside that they're always glorifying Krishna. They're singing songs of Krishna, poems of Krishna, and they're meditating on Krishna. And sometimes the gopis come and they console Mother Yashoda, just like I was reading in the 10th canto recently, that when Krishna would go to the forest, then they'll be very sad and they'll be meditating on Krishna the whole day. And then Krishna would come back in the evening. And as Krishna is coming back to Vrindavan in the evening, they would see, the gopis would see from a distance the dust raised from the hoofs of all the thousands and thousands of cows. And then the gopis would be really excited, yes, Krishna is coming back. So then Mother Yashoda, she would take all the gopis to the highest house, the highest balcony, terrace in Vrindavan. And once all the gopis were there, she would choose the tallest gopi. The gopis were all young girls, but still she would choose the youngest gopi to stand at the top of the tallest terrace to try to see where is Krishna, how far is he, like that. So this was their Krishna consciousness. They were engaged in their duties, and they were peacefully prosecuting Krishna consciousness, which is genuine Vedic equality. The cowherd men, on the other hand, Nanda Maharaj, Krishna, Balaram, and the rest of the cowherd boys, what was the responsibility given to Krishna when he was a young boy, just 6 years old, 5, 6 years old? He was Vatsapal. He was tending the calves. So he would take all the baby cows to the forest, graze them, all that sort of stuff, bring them back. And then he became Gopal, because now he grew up, he became Gopal, he was given more responsibility. So the men were engaged in agriculture, the more physical, laborious sort of work. And they too were engaged in Krishna consciousness. And everyone was peaceful. And it was not like each person, each party was singing that I should be doing this and I should be doing that. It's not like that. So we see the superlative example of Vedic equality in Vrindavan. Now, these princesses are in a compromising position, because here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that according to Vedic culture, because chastity was held in really high regard, if a woman was in the custody of another man besides her husband, then, or any other man, even if she was not married, then others would not agree to marry her. Now, I can think of at least, well, let's take the example of Ramayana, because that's the example that comes to my mind. Mother Sita was exactly in the same position as these princesses, at least on 2 occasions. So she was married to Lord Ramachandra, but then what happened? They got banished, and they went to the forest, and then we know the whole episode of Marichi, and then she was kidnapped, and she was taken by force by Ravana to the kingdom of Lanka. And just like Baumasur here has kidnapped so many princesses, Ravana, being bewildered by, blinded by material lust, had also done exactly the same thing. He had kidnapped many different princesses, many different women as well. And as Ravana was taking Mother Sita through his palace in Lanka, he was telling her, all you have to do is just accept to become my queen. And this whole vast kingdom will be yours. You'll get the rightful share of this kingdom. Just agree to be my queen. All my other queens will become your slaves, he was telling Mother Sita. But what did Mother Sita do? Obviously, she didn't fall for that, nor was she interested in that sort of stuff. Even though she was held captive by Ravana, another man, she meditated constantly on the holy name of Lord Ramachandra, her husband. And she strictly followed the regulative principles of bhakti. So even when we're in such a compromising position, okay, before I get to that, that's one instance of a situation where Mother Sita was put in a compromising position. A second instance where Sita Devi was put in a compromising position was when Ravana is dead, right? Lanka is burnt up, and they've all gone back to Ayodhya. Mother Sita, Lord Ramachandra. And one day, Bhagavatam explains, I think it's in the 9th canto of Bhagavatam, there's a verse where Lord Ramachandra, one night, he's taking a tour of his kingdom. Just incognito, actually. No one knows that he's the king, but he's going incognito. And he overhears a conversation between a husband and wife. And the husband is yelling at his wife, saying that, I'm not going to accept you anymore because you spent the night in some other man's house. Something like that. It's there, the verse is there. And the husband is chastising his wife, and he's saying, I'm not like Lord Ramachandra, who accepts his wife when she's been in the custody of another man. So then Lord Ramachandra, being Maryada Purusha, he has to uphold etiquette and rules and all this sort of stuff. He thinks to himself, look, I'm being ridiculed by my praja, therefore I should give up Sita Devi in order to set an example. So very unfortunately, Sita is banished from Ayodhya, and at that time she's pregnant as well. So she goes to the ashram of Valmiki. She goes to the ashram of Valmiki, and there she's being taken care of, Valmiki and there's some other ascetic women in that hermitage as well. And we see there that in one sense you can understand that she accepts the Guru and the association of Vaishnavas, and she continues prosecuting her Krishna consciousness, and she doesn't harbor any envy or any anger towards Lord Ramachandra. Because as we know from Krishna Leela, when the pure devotee of Krishna or Lord Ramachandra is in separation from Krishna, they feel their presence even more. It's a very difficult thing for us to conceive. If we were in that position, we'd get very angry, very frustrated, and we would harbor a lot of envy and all that sort of stuff. But Mother Sita was not like that at all. She was completely peaceful, and she gave birth to her 2 children, Love and Kush, and they grew up and all that sort of stuff. So we can see that even when we're not under the protection of our family members, because ultimately everyone is a fallible soldier, right? Prabhupada uses that term, fallible soldier. Krishna is the only Achyuta, he's the only infallible personality. So when we're seemingly being taken care of by our family members who are fallible, still we need to recognize that the real infallible person is Krishna, and just as Mother Sita took care took shelter of Ramachandra in these two instances. So previously when she was with Ravana, kidnapped by Ravana, she took shelter of the holy name, and she took shelter of the principles of Bhakti Yoga. Right? Sadhana Bhakti, like that, for us. So we can take shelter of these two things. And Krishna will award his protection. Secondly, when she was with Valmiki Muni, she took the help and the protection of Guru, the Guru's instructions, and the Vaishnavas. So these four things, if we take shelter of, then we can be assured that this is the actual real protection. Because Krishna, he protects, okay, if he wants to, he protects the physical body, he'll protect your mind as well. Right? Prabhupada quotes the verse, Kshatriyo hi prajarakshan. The real duty of a Kshatriya is not just to provide physical protection to the praja, but actually to protect the praja from lust. Because lust, as is explained in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is the eternal enemy of the soul. Right? Lust, passion, and therefore wrath. Krishna is saying. So Krishna provides protection from the mind and its enemies like lust, anger, greed, malice, envy, and illusion. But more importantly, Krishna provides protection, spiritual protection, for you to practice Krishna consciousness. And if we take shelter of these four things, Krishna will do that. And I'll just finish with this, that so after these princesses were married to Krishna, then Krishna, as I explained, he expanded himself into 16,108 different forms of himself, each unique. And the princesses were lodged, as it's explained in the next verse. All those princesses were lodged in different palaces and apartments. And then, one day, Narada Muni comes to see what's going on in Dwarka. So Narada Muni comes to witness Krishna's pastimes, and he goes into one of the palaces, and I think the first palace is Rukmini's palace, and there Rukmini, she's fanning Krishna with a chamara whisk. And immediately, just as Krishna did with Sudama, Krishna got up, bowed down, paid his obeisances to Narada Muni. Old Devarishi has come. And then he got some water and a receptacle, and he bathed Narada Muni's feet. And Krishna accepted the foot wash of Narada on his own head. And Narada Muni was completely bewildered. So then he requested Krishna for a boon. Please, Krishna, grant me the boon, the benediction, that I will have constant remembrance of you. Krishna granted him that. How? In the following way. Then Narada Muni went to a different palace, and he saw that the same Krishna, looks a little different, but the same Krishna was with a different queen, and he was playing dice. And then he went to another palace, and Krishna was doing yagya. Krishna was in a different palace. He was practicing, he's a Kshatriya, so he's practicing his sword maneuvers with different weapons. And in another palace, he's eating and all these different things. And practically, if you look at that whole chapter in that 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see that there's numerous verses, 10, maybe 15 verses, just talking about what Narada Muni saw in each one of the palaces. Narada Muni comes to the conclusion that he laughs. But he tries to, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Narada Muni tries to contain his laughter upon seeing these different forms of Krishna, because he understands that I don't want to show Krishna that I'm laughing at him, because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I've witnessed that because he's omnipresent in all these different palaces, so I should show some respect to Krishna. And Narada Muni starts to feel really bad. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains a conversation that takes place between Krishna and Narada, where Krishna comes and he tells Narada Muni, don't feel bad, don't feel guilty that I have accepted your foot wash upon my head. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that he quotes the verse that he will quote in Kurukshetra, Yad yad acharati shashtas tad tad evata rojana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever exemplary acts, right, a great person performs, all the common people follow. So just to set an example of how to receive saintly people, how to receive the brahmanas, I washed your feet and I took the water upon my head. So don't feel bad. And Thakur says that the example is given that just as a little baby sometimes may kick innocently the mother or father, the mother or father doesn't take any offense that the foot of their child has touched their body. So in the same way, Narada Muni, I don't take any offense. And he says, my dear child, Narada Muni, I don't take offense that your foot has touched this water and that water has touched my body. So don't feel guilty. And this really nice chapter ends with Shukadeva Goswami giving benedictions to the devotees, saying that whoever hears of this particular pastime of Krishna, him marrying these queens and Narada Muni seeing all these different forms of Krishna, two things will happen to them. They'll be liberated and established eternally in their pure devotional service. So it's very nice that we're hearing these. It's like Prabhupada has given us a summary study of the Krishna book, the 10th canto, as the Krishna book. So here we're seeing Uddhava's version of the Krishna book. Right? So we can see how much Uddhava is contemplating, because we can think for ourselves. If someone asks you, okay, please speak of the pastimes of Krishna, you'd be a bit perplexed. Oh, where can I start? What should I say? What happens after this Leela? But we see here Uddhava is